to create a big tent, an alliance, an organization that would bring together people from different sectors, from different countries, from different walks of life and different perspectives on the problem, to come together to try and enable the sharing of clinical and genomic data in order to improve health. And actually, I have to say that 2 years later, it's actually quite remarkable and exciting to see what has happened. This, as everyone knows, this started 2.5 years ago, less than 2.5 years ago. Just to give you a sense of how rapidly this has developed. 2.5 years ago, there was a meeting just about an idea. 2 years ago, this month, we announced the intention to form an alliance. Not that there was, but we had letters of intent. Just about 15 months ago, we had the first meeting hosted by the Wellcome Trust, which was very much sort of made up on the fly as people came together to see, first time in a room together, what could happen. And now only 15 months after that, there are vibrant working groups, there's activities all over the world, going all over the organization. And we're beginning to really see how we can move from the starting point to actually being in the midst of hopefully making progress towards our goal. And so the 3 days here are really focused on both talking about the individual activities that are going on within the Alliance, to look at how they relate to one another and interconnect and synergize, but also to talk about what's going on in the rest of the world. Well, somebody was making a comment out at breakfast that even though this has gone rapidly and well compared to any reasonable expectation of a group of people from around the world coming together to do something, the world, of course, has moved even more quickly. And so even while we're pedaling hard to and making progress, the world is speeding up. And in order to remain relevant and also to try and have a positive impact and make sure the outcome is as good as it can be, we're going to have to work even harder and more effectively. So I'm going to take just a minute and look back over where we've been and where we're going and just talk about 3 brief points. The first is that as we look at the last 2 years, what we've really accomplished is, I think, can be summarized in 2 things. One, we've created a discussion, a connection, a set of people who weren't talking to each other and working together before, and we've built a foundation. And these are things like the framework, the genomics API, the security infrastructure, the working groups. And these are critically important tools and methods and frameworks on which to build sharing of information. And had we not done that, if we had gone straight to the end goal of just putting data together, I think it would have been a mistake, because we wouldn't have had the solid foundation and the understanding that we have. We also built this network that now has 320 organizations that have signed on to be members of the Global Alliance from over 30 countries, and there are 700 individuals who are participating in one form or another. So that's our foundation, is the people, the organizations, and the foundational sort of framework and tools. But we started moving a year ago towards actually building on that foundation actual data sharing flagship demonstration projects. These, in the spirit and framework of the Alliance, are done by the members. It's not the Alliance itself that does them, it's the members of the Alliance who come together to do things. And we're going to hear about those today, and in particular, the first 3 to really get off the ground: the Beacon, the Matchmaker Exchange, and the BRCA Challenge, which is a partnership with many other organizations. And these are beginning to put those ideas and people to work, actually sharing data and learning what happens. But as I said, the world is moving rapidly. And so my third point is, it does feel to many of us that we are at a bit of an inflection point, where we're going from decades of talk and discussion, at least about the more modern era, if you will, of genomic and clinical data, to actually it happening all over the world, being used in clinical medicine, being used in many types of organizations. And as we're going to talk about in the afternoon, there are many large-scale projects developing around the world, or already well on their way. And so in order for us to succeed, in order for data to be shared, we're going to have to engage strongly with what's going on in the world and hopefully be relevant and helpful to it, lest the events just get ahead of us and things might not turn out as well as we would like. So those are my opening comments. I have a couple of other things to say. One is I want to announce some really exciting developments about the leadership of the Global Alliance from the beginning. We always had the idea that the steering committee and the steering committee leadership would evolve over time. It would be not a good thing for any such organization if the same people did it for the same time. And so there's two announcements I'm excited to make. One is I've served as chair of the steering committee from the outset, and Martin Bobrow led a process with the nominating committee and a lot of consultation, and I'm very excited to announce that Tom Hudson, who is a current steering committee member, president and scientific director of the Ontario Institute for Cancer Research, has agreed to serve as chair-elect of the steering committee and will take over sometime this year. We haven't actually worked out exactly the transition, and will take over as chair of the Global Alliance. And having known Tom for 20 years, I can't think of a better person in the world to take this forward, and I want to thank him and actually thank him publicly for taking on that role. So thank you very much, Tom. And Tom will, his first duties as chair-elect will be to introduce our speaker in a moment. But before we do that, I also want to announce 3 new steering committee members. Again, Martin has led this process, and 3 new members of the steering committee: Heidi Rem from Harvard and the Brigham Women's and Partners, Naz Rahman, head of the Division of Genetics and Epidemiology at the Institute of Cancer Research. Sorry, I don't have all the titles. Heidi is Associate Professor of Pathology at Harvard, and David Glazier, Director of Engineering at Google. And those 3 individuals have joined the steering committee, and we continue to look for another 1 or 2 members of the steering committee. Martin is actively working on that with a particular eye towards increased diversity, geographic, or possibly bringing some other perspective that we don't currently have. And you can feel free to talk to Martin, who's sitting in the front row, about that. We've actually called multiple times for nominations, but we've had many, but not as many as would be ideal. So if you have ideas, please let him know. So I want to thank everybody, Tom, Heidi, Naz, and David, as well as the existing members of the steering committee, for their being willing to bring in new leadership. And over time, we will, as the Constitution describes, evolve the steering committee so that it's constantly having fresh views and a chance for more people to be involved. Is that what? Yes, thank you. One other thing, that Charles Sawyers and Betsy Nabel, wasn't on my notes, I'm sorry. Charles Sawyers and Betsy Nabel, who had been founding members of the steering committee, have asked to roll off, and we gratefully thank them for their service. Both of them will remain involved, Betsy in the sort of senior advisory role, and Charles, who's very deeply engaged in the clinical working group and cancer programs, actually was not looking to become less involved in the alliance, but actually to focus his time and energy on that, on cancer data sharing, and so we are happy to have him continue to do that. So thank you for that reminder, Peter. So the last thing I'll say, and then I'll hand it over to Tom to introduce our keynote speaker, is just sort of what are we hoping to get out of today. So this is the plenary session where everybody comes together, and so one thing obviously that comes at such a meeting is learning about the different connections between what we're doing. This is actually with 300 member organizations, 700 people, multiple working groups and projects. It's actually hard to keep up with everything going on, but we do have a singular goal, which is to improve the ability of clinical and genomic data to be shared to improve health. And so it's critical these different pieces do come together. So as I said, in the morning, we're going to hear about a number of our own efforts, the projects in particular, but also the working groups, some of their products. And then in the afternoon, we shift to this idea of really getting the best sense we can in a relatively brief period of time of what's going on in the world at large. We have some sessions we're going to hear about that from both different large-scale efforts in different sectors about the challenges and needs, and sort of leave you with this thought, which is that we all should be thinking about, 2 years from now, if we're 2 years into this journey, 2 years from now, where do we want to be? And I think everybody would agree that we want really tangible benefits to medicine, to healthcare, to patients to be coming out of this. And the tangible benefits presumably will be in the spirit of, not the spirit, but in the reality of data sets that have been brought together in an appropriate and responsible way that are enabling discovery, that are enabling better diagnosis, better interpretation of genomic information, and propelling, hopefully, better care for patients. And what we need to think about here, and we'll come back at the end, and all of you should be thinking about, is what can we do that will really actually enable that? despite the large number of people involved, there's only so much we can do. We have to have laser-like focus, I think, on making a difference. And so as this has evolved, we decided in the first year that it was about sort of the building the coalition and the tools and foundation. In the second year, we decided that it was about demonstration projects that would begin to put that to work. What is it for the third year? What is it for the fourth year? And we should all be thinking about that and make sure that we don't, in the spirit of trying to solve all problems, not solve any problems. So the goal is to make sure we solve some problems. So with that, thank you for coming again. Thanks to our hosts and sponsors. I'm going to hand it over to Tom Hudson to introduce our keynote. Thank you.